Hello reader, and welcome again to another book review on my channel, DanWhiteBooks. You may have seen recently that I reviewed a dystopian classic by Margaret Atwood called The Handmaid's Tale. You may have even read it yourself. I was heavily praising the book, and despite its dark nature, I found it very enjoyable. I particularly liked the emotive voice of the main character, and also the landscape in which this book took place, that being the state of Gilead. Well, some 35 years later, Margaret Atwood took the liberty of writing a sequel to this book, a sequel that went on to win the Booker Prize 2019. It's a book that takes us back to the monstrous society known as Gilead, a totalitarian state in the former United States of America, corrupting and corrupted by the use of out-of-context biblical logic and verse, whereby women are forced to serve men in the eyes of God, with next to no civil liberties and a very bleak future. My friends, welcome to DanWhiteBooks, and today I'll be reviewing the highly anticipated sequel to The Handmaid's Tale, The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. The story of this book is split into 3 transcripts from different characters. We meet a young girl called Jade, who lives outside of the regime in Canada, a girl who lives in the regime in a commander's house known as Agnes, and finally, a senior official of the state known as Aunt Lydia. I won't be defining the state in which this book takes place, the actual physical country as it were, as I feel that would make up a video alone. However, I will endeavour to add insight into this story and some of the central characters featured throughout. This will contain minimal spoilers. For this brief introduction to the story, I'll be focusing on the 3 characters who write their personal transcripts, which you will be reading in this tale. The first is a senior member of Gilead known as Aunt Lydia. She is feared throughout the regime and commands a status of power within the party. She writes to you, the reader, even though she knows what she is doing would be considered a crime punishable by death. She is an elderly woman who's grown tired of the corruption so rampant across the state and is in a unique position to do something about it. Corruption is rife with false testimonies, backstabbing, and cover-ups seeding themselves through the country. We are taken back to Aunt Lydia's origins as a normal working woman and the switching of power when the fall of the former United States led to the birth of this new regime. Our second character is a girl called Agnes, who was born of a handmaid, although she does not know it. Handmaids in this world are women who are forced to copulate with higher ranking officials in a servitude to God. This is the central story of the previous book. They are forced to produce a baby for the commander and his wife of the household, and then they are moved on. The child they produce is not to be theirs. Agnes experiences life within the regime and falls on hard times when the commander's wife dies, and she finds out her life has been a lie. We experience her neglect in growing up when the commander remarries, as they do when their wives pass. We see her schooling, the doctrine she is raised on. She's later initiated as an aunt, for reasons I will not say here. And finally we meet the girl known as Jade, who is raised in Canada and far away from the regime. This is in a society that is not far in the future and largely representative of her own. She despises the regime in Gilead and can see it as perhaps you and I would today. The abuses so rampant, especially, or mainly, in regards to females. We get to know these characters throughout the pages and follow them both through their past and through their present, whereby their lives come together. This book, unlike its predecessor, takes you into the state of Gilead and its top leaders. It's a book fans have asked for, deepening exploration into the state first explored in the first book and going further to explain everyday life. But does it hold up? Well, no. I was wholly disappointed by this book, especially considering that it won the Booker Prize. Admittedly, I haven't read the other books nominated. Some time has passed since that reward, but I sense I would prefer at least one of them. This comes as a shame, reader. If you've seen my review of the previous book, you'll know that I was very praising of the intimate writing style and the deep connection with the central character. Reading this book, the writing style is completely different and nowhere near as powerful and as engrossing. Some characters are endearing, but the horror and shock is mostly gone, and instead this book reads more like a piece of teen fiction and has nothing of the strength of its predecessor. The story is to a point engrossing, but it's very predictable. I feel this book is the book the fans may have wanted, but one the author did not wish to write. It's by no means awful, but it is a letdown, especially when you compare it to the book preceding. You do learn details of the twisted world and the state of Gilead, but in a story that takes a long time to get going. And even when it does, it limps at a slow pace. It is true the last book was not an action-packed thriller, I'll agree, but What made that book so good was the narration that put you directly in the head of the character. This and the often graphic level of detail that came unexpectedly but still served to enhance the narrative and your level of connection and empathy with the central character offer it. This is vacant in the Testaments, and the book feels unwilling to delve into the gritty details that shocked you in the previous book. Thus, you do not feel as involved with the main characters, and neither do the others, and that is a letdown. So what would I rate this? Well, despite its flaws, there are parts that are engaging, if on a lower level compared to the previous book. The dialogue or the transcript with Aunt Lydia serves as one of the better sections. I feel my disappointment comes in comparing this book to the previous one. It lacked the emotion and honestly felt like it was written by a different author. And that is a strange thing to say, but if you've read both of these books, I think you may agree, or you may notice the complete difference in the writing style. The Testaments scores from me a 58 out of 100. Its critiques were not enough for me to outright stop reading it, and there were enjoyable parts, but it lacked that special bond that made the previous book so memorable, and that is a shame. However, I would of course recommend you pick it up and read it for yourselves. Mine is the opinion of one, and having won a prize, this book has something for it. It just was not for me, especially when I compared it to the other book. I really loved the intimacy in that book of the character and the emotion, and especially the writing style, which I described almost as poetic. It was lovely, really. It was a great read and quite thoughtful, quite shocking, and it just had a lot going for it. This book, it just felt completely different. It's not awful at all. It's not in that category. It's just nowhere near up to the previous book. I think I may have rated that a 9 or a 90, or an 89. And this one just not there, I'm afraid. However, if you would like to purchase this book and make your own opinion, which of course I always advise, there will be a link below to where you can buy this book, and that will support this little channel. If you enjoyed this review, please subscribe. You can follow me on Goodreads at www.goodreads/DanWhiteBooks, where you can see all the latest books I am reading. I thank you again for coming here and watching a book review. I would like to hear your thoughts about this book as well, because it was kind of shocking to me that it was not as I thought it would be at all. So please, if you'd like to leave any thoughts, go in the comments there. Like, subscribe, do what you want to do. I've been DanWhiteBooks. Keep safe out there, and thank you for watching.